Hello psychology students, this is Mrs. Olson and part 2 of social learning. In part 1 we left off with observational learning, talking about modeling and imitation, and we have one more concept to talk about for observational learning. And the third concept is called disinhibition, okay? The definition reads that watching someone engage in a threatening activity without being punished or hurt, and so because the observer has watched this person engage in this behavior without being hurt or punished, the observer finds it easier to engage in that behavior later. We're going to talk about some examples here in a moment, okay? So first example, sometimes disinhibition is actually used in therapy, like with phobias. So example, guy handling a snake. I am a person that does not like snakes, okay? Wouldn't say I necessarily have a phobia to it, but I don't want to handle any snakes. Now, in order to get me to hold a snake, I might watch somebody. They have gloves, they have the know-how, the understanding on how it is to hold a snake. I watch them engage in this behavior. They might teach me a little bit about hanging on to a snake, how to not hurt it, how to hold it, all of those kinds of things. And because I have watched them engage in this seemingly threatening activity, right? And I'm using the word seemingly on purpose because I don't like to handle snakes. It's kind of scary to me, i.e. dangerous, right? That's why I don't want to handle the snake. But if I watch somebody engage in this seemingly threatening activity, and I'm exposed to that several times, I might find it easier to hold a snake, i.e. engage in that behavior later on. All right, now here are some other examples. One about little kids that are first learning how to swim. Well, were any of you afraid of the water? You did not want to get into the deep end. You did not want to take swim lessons. You're afraid of drowning. You're afraid of sharks, right? You're afraid of something coming to get you in the water. Well, if you watch other children having fun, learning the strokes, learning how to paddle, learning how to kick, and you watch them do this, you might find yourself engaging in those swimming behaviors and that activity later on because those kids didn't get hurt while they were taking swimming lessons. Okay. Now, this can be used, this can be not used, but seen in a negative sense also, disinhibition. That being, there it is, let's take video games, violent video games that youngsters, let's say kids under the age of 12, I mean if you want to lower the age you can, but let's say that little kids are not monitored while they are playing mature video games, okay? I know Grand Theft Auto isn't one of those ones that is necessarily played all the time. There are more popular games these days. But in these types of video games, right, that are violent, people are shooting other people, they're not necessarily being hurt back, they are not necessarily being pursued by the police and handcuffed and thrown in jail, right? So let's say that you have a little kid that can play these video games all day long. Nobody's telling them, teaching them that you can't do those types of behaviors outside of the screen, the house, the video game. They might, there have been links, they might find it okay to engage in those activities outside of the home and threaten other people in those kinds of ways, okay? Let's see. Now, we are on to another concept within social learning, and that is behavior modification. Okay? So behavior modification is a process. It says it involves a series of well-defined steps to change behavior. So behavior modification plans are a systematic way of teaching someone the behavior that it is that you want them to know how to do or to exhibit. Okay? So we've talked about modeling, which is observational learning. Modeling can be used to teach these desired behaviors, and sometimes within behavior modification plans, classical conditioning is used, and it's actually helpful in helping people to overcome their fears, like their phobias, okay? So behavior modification plans are often used in classrooms. In therapy, you might see a behavior modification plan used, and it might also, within the behavior modification plan, you might see classical conditioning techniques used by the therapist to help somebody overcome their fears. All right, so sometimes you can also see operant conditioning principles used in these behavior modification plans, and what you often see operant conditioning used for in these plans is with everyday types of things. So we're going to talk about token economies in a couple of slides, and you're going to see those principles of operant conditioning used in a token economy. Okay, so within behavior modification plans, what happens is that somebody writes the plan, right? So the material is broken down into frames. You can think of that as into steps. And the person whose behavior is being modified, they receive positive reinforcement for completing the frames, for going through the steps of the process. So let's think about potty training. My toddler right now, we're trying to teach her to go potty by herself. So anytime she gets close to the potty chair, I try to provide positive reinforcement saying it's okay to go potty on the potty chair, right? I don't want her to keep being in diapers all the time. So anytime she shows an interest in going potty on the potty chair, I provide positive reinforcement with my voice, my facial expressions, and if she actually goes potty in the potty chair, then she gets a prize, right? So that's the operant conditioning part of the behavior modification plan. There is a reinforcement, and in this case, we give her chocolate if she goes potty in the potty chair. Okay, so here it is, token economies. What is a token economy? Well, people are systematically paid to act appropriately. So, kind of a simple version of this is the example with our toddler going potty, then she receives chocolate. That's the systematically paid part. But let's talk about what that might look like in a classroom. Okay, so I said here that token economies can be used in classrooms. So think back to your elementary school days. If you were in the traditional classroom, you might have been part of these behavior modification plans that used token economies. You might have earned tickets for good behavior, and after accumulating so many tickets, you might be able to cash it in, turn it into the teacher, and pick a prize out of the prize box. You might see a token economy used, say, like with homework. The teacher might have the students keep track of completing homework assignments. They might get a sticker, they might get a star, right? They might get, sometimes teachers will make like their own bucks. Let's say that their own dollars, their own money. So let's say that the teacher's last name begins with a B. Benson Bucks, it might be called. So in Mrs. Benson's class, if you completed homework, you cleaned up after yourself, you opened doors, you were on time, coming in and out of recess, those types of things, you might earn a Benson buck. And after you have accumulated so many Benson bucks, you could then buy something out of the student's store or the classroom store, okay? So that's a token economy. People are systematically paid to act appropriately. And of course, all of these actions, these behaviors, they have to be taught and explained, especially if you are in the classroom setting. Okay, now token economies are not just used in classrooms. You can also see them. You can see them be applied in, say, mental hospital situations. So in those situations, instead of, say, having like a Benson buck or a star on a chart type of thing, they might receive attention for desired behavior. So maybe they get an extra session, say, with a counselor. They get more visitation rights, those types of things. Okay, so here are examples of token economies in the classroom. Okay, and we are coming to the end here, and the last one is on self-control. So in your readings under social learning, it was talking about the PSQ4R method, right? So that's a good one. Now here is another one. It doesn't really have a name to it exactly, but self-control sort of processes can be set up without you having to write anything down. And it says that you can set up personal rewards and punishments to shape your own thoughts and actions, okay? Setting up personal rewards and punishments to help you to meet a goal. So, first of all, you have to define the problem, or you have to state what it is that you're trying to achieve. You have to state the goal. And then you set up a behavioral contract with yourself. So you can write it down, but maybe it's just kind of in your mind as far as what your reinforcer is going to be when you achieve your goal, okay? So I'm going to actually go back 1 second here. So one time I had a TA that had her own kind of a self-control system that she set up for herself. Now, like a lot of teenagers, she was somebody who loved her phone. She liked to check social media. She liked to see what was going on, see text messages coming in, all of that kind of stuff, even when she was doing her homework or studying. Now, she knew that she had to get her schoolwork done, so the type of contract that she set up with herself while she was studying was, let's say that she's reading a novel for English, okay? She would tell herself that she had to read 4 or 5 pages in a row. She couldn't stop. She couldn't check her text messages until she read the 4 or 5 pages in a row. When she accomplished that goal, the 4 or 5 pages, then she could look at her Snapchat, she could then look at her text messages, and maybe she could only do 1 or 2 of those things. So she could take a tiny little break, look at social media, and then she had to read another 4 or 5 pages. So the reinforcer was checking her phone. The goal was really completing her studying, her homework, okay? She was a good student, so it must have worked for her. So we got a sneak peek of the last couple of slides, and that is you should be studying, but maybe you spend way too much time on your phone. Maybe put that thing to the side, set up your own little system of goals and reward system, and maybe you'll get your stuff done faster, and you might increase your grade. You might increase your test score, something like that. Okay? Now, that brings us to the end of the video lesson on social learning. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.